Have you ever pondered what drove a group of colonists to rise against an empire that was, at the time, the most powerful in the world? What were the causes that led to a war of such magnitude, a war that would birth a nation, the War of Independence? The first cause that set the wheels of rebellion in motion was the Proclamation of 1763. This decree by the British Crown forbade American colonists from settling beyond the Appalachian Mountains, a move that was seen as an infringement on their rights. This planted the seeds of resentment as colonists felt their freedom of movement unjustly curtailed. Next came the Sugar Act of 1764. This was an attempt by Britain to recoup some of the costs of the French and Indian War by taxing the colonies. The act increased the duties on imported sugar and other items such as textiles, coffee, wines and indigo. Colonists saw this as an abuse of power, a sentiment that further fanned the flames of discontent. Then, in 1765, came the infamous Stamp Act. This act imposed a direct tax on the colonies for the first time. It required all legal documents, newspapers, and even playing cards to carry a tax stamp. The colonies responded with a unified protest, declaring that taxation without representation was a violation of their rights. The Townshend Acts of 1767 presented another cause. These acts imposed duties on tea, glass, lead, paints and paper, to name a few. The revenue collected was to be used to pay the salaries of colonial governors, making them independent of the colonial assemblies, a move seen as an attempt to undermine colonial autonomy. Finally, the Intolerable Acts of 1774, in response to the Boston Tea Party, closed the port of Boston, reduced the power of self-government in the colony of Massachusetts, and allowed royal officers to be tried elsewhere. These acts were seen as a direct attack on colonial liberties, and they ignited a flame of rebellion that led to the First Continental Congress, and eventually the War of Independence. In summary, the causes of the War of Independence were a series of acts and decisions by the British Crown that were viewed as oppressive and unjust by the American colonists. Each act, each decision was a spark that ignited the flame of rebellion, a flame that culminated in the War of Independence. These causes, from the Proclamation of 1763 to the Intolerable Acts, were not just a set of disconnected events, but rather a progression of grievances that built upon one another. They were the dominoes that set off a chain reaction, leading to a war that would change the course of history. The impact of these causes was profound, for they not only led to the War of Independence, but also shaped the ethos of a new nation, a nation that would be built on the principles of freedom, liberty, and the right to self-governance.